Hi, everybody. It's Natalie from Creative Makers, and here we are in the studio with J. Michael Walker. And
Hello.
I'm just going to give you the preface that it's hotter than Hades here.
But
It's
we're having a heavenly good time.
a
So it's
heavenly
okay.
good time. Yeah. It's just hot in California right now, 99 right now, and it's only 11 a.m. Hi, two people that have just joined us. Hey, Margaret. Margaret Garcia's here.
Margaret.
Okay. Oh, we get a little thumbs up from her. Awesome. Anyway, so I'm just going to start. So I only ask one question and one question only, and then where it goes, everything will be dictated by that.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it's easy. It's easy.
It's not a multiple choice or a true and false. Okay.
Nah.
Okay.
So, so I want you to tell me about your creative journey as a kid. How did creativity show up for you as a child?
I think it started when they cut the umbilical cord.
That you had to wait that long?
I was 9 months gestating, planning, and then from then on, it was just hit the ground, running, waddling, or something. I think I've always done art, and I think probably the most important moment was when somebody gave me a crayon or a pencil, or I found it, I just grabbed it and started mark making, and I said, "This is why I'm here," and I've just always drawn. I mean, I think of everything I do as drawing. Everything I create is a drawing, even if it's a painting or a photograph. It's drawing. That's who I am. That's what I do. And I remember that as a child, people would say, the adults would say that sort of thing that they do. Say, "Oh, I know he's going to be an artist when he grows up," and I'd just say, "I am an artist."
Right.
That was my self-identification.
You were already there.
Yeah, I mean, because I was drawing. I mean, you can't say I'm a drawer because, you can say it in Spanish, soy un dibujante, but, in English is draw. Then it sounds like a chest of drawers, so you have to say, you can say I'm an artist. And it was just an affirmation. It was just not even an affirmation, it was a recognition. And something that I've always done and been, yeah.
So, as a child and drawing and discovering how to draw and how to draw better and better, did you actually take classes, or is this every single bit of it self-taught?
Or self-inflicted.
Self.
I didn't know what the path was. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. There was a museum there called the Arkansas Art Center in Little Rock, but when I was growing up, it was an historical museum. It didn't have, the best of my knowledge, didn't have changing exhibitions or any contemporary art. So it was 19th century landscapes and portraiture, which was totally uninteresting.
But at least you got that. I mean, because it could have been a museum, devoted to agriculture or something.
That might have been more interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it was stuff that I didn't like looking at, so it wasn't interesting.
Fair enough.
And then when I took art classes there was one offered at summer school at the Arkansas Art Center. My mom enrolled me. And then I thought, oh boy, it's an art class. You're going to do art. And then they set up a still life, and you were supposed to draw it the way the still life actually looked. And I thought, I could set up stuff in the kitchen at home and draw them, but I wanted us to do art. I wanted this. And
what did art mean to you in that moment? Because, a still life to some people is art.
Could be amazing. Yes, exactly. It could be a religious experience. And you could actually say interesting things with a still life, obviously, and metaphorically you could say things like Velázquez. But to me, I just wanted to express myself, and so I wanted to express myself better. If someone could facilitate that, if I had an art class where I showed what I was doing, And they said, well, maybe, try doing this a bit and see if that helps you do that. But it was, due to it just, I guess I was just bullheaded and impatient. I wonder where that comes from. Somewhere in my family. And so I just wanted to break free. I was born into, and maybe most of us have been born into, very rigid circumstance, very paternal, or what's a patriarchal, familial structure and church structure and racist structure and all of those sorts of things. And I wanted to freely express myself and also express my belief system, and my interests. And that was what I was hoping that art classes would help facilitate. But rather, it was, I guess if I had been a musician wanting to play and they had me practicing scales all day, I might have responded similarly if nobody was, around to explain, dude, you gotta learn how to.
Right, you gotta learn how to play the
what
instrument
notes,
first.
What notes go with other notes before you just go out and do stuff. But anyway, with drawing, it seemed like, since it's a singular experience, you're doing it by yourself, then just whatever you can do to develop your skills. And then I discovered doing contour drawing.
Wait a minute. I want to go back to that class.
Okay.
So you got into this class and they had a still life and you were obviously disappointed. Did you stick it out?
I don't remember if I don't think I stuck it out. I think that...
You're like, that's it, Mom, I quit.
Well, I mean, I did it. I think it's hard to remember. It was a while ago. But I think I went maybe 1 or 2 classes. And it wasn't like you had to sign up for a whole summer's worth, but you probably paid $5 a week to go or something, or $10. And I said, I don't think so. And my mom said, okay. She was highly supportive, within her means. So.
Okay, so now tell me what you were going to tell me next. But I don't know.
Margaret, do you know what I...
Does she know your story?
No, but she probably might know a better version of it. So I don't know. I also thought when I was growing up, when I was in elementary school, well, not middle school anyway, that there would be this natural progression. I would graduate from high school and I'd go off to art school, university, right? And then that was, so when I was in middle school and high school in the 60s, 1960s, and so there was all this blossoming creativity going on in the world. And so I was exposed to that in magazines, right? Like there was this wonderful magazine, I magazine, EYE magazine. Okay, it was very hip. Anyway, and then whatever I would see in popular media, such as popular media was in 1967. And that's where I wanted to be, is out creating art in that realm. But my father, who divorced my mom the day I started, or left the family the day I started high school, made it pretty clear that they were not going to financially support me going to art school. That was not in the cards. So I was going to go to a regular college if I could find one that would let me in. Sorry.
No, okay. All right, so that's what I wanted to know. So they would support you for school, but it couldn't be art school.
Well, they would partially support me for college, but not for art school. Yeah, right.
Did you cheat the system by going to regular college and taking all the art classes?
No, because actually when I went to, I had to look, I had to look for a college on my own, and it wasn't in 1968, 69, in Little Rock, Arkansas, at Central High School. It wasn't very easy to get a counselor to help you go through all of this.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for colleges and something that was really inexpensive, because who was going to pay for this? And I found a small liberal arts college in Oklahoma, and they accepted me and gave me a tuition waiver scholarship, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I couldn't wait to get the hell out of Dodge, but I wound up in Oklahoma, which was sort of like a lateral pass. It wasn't really forward motion, but the community at the college with all of the other students, I mean, that was extraordinary. It was really wonderful and liberating and very exciting. But the art class, got into the first art class, and here comes the still life again. And but I asked if I could sneak a couple of more things into the still lives. I put, a little toy bunny rabbit in the corner and some other things, and it gave me a little bit of feeling like I was, having fun rather than, drudging myself through it. But the being in college was great. That was a place, because of the energy with the other students. Right?
Yeah. When you were doing that still life, did they have? I mean, were you expected to do that still life as it exactly was, or
Yeah.
were they making any allowances for what your style might have already been?
No, they weren't. They wanted you to draw it, and I thought that's why we have cameras, right? It's like, but I mean, it was okay. I was just, chomping at the bit. I'd finally gotten away from home, and I wanted to express myself and do stuff, and that was not what this was.
Did you ever get to the point that you understood that that was like the beginning point for basically every place? It was sort of like the barometer for the teachers, so they knew where you were at, or was that maybe not the case?
I felt that they could find where I was at through other methods, like talking to me with me or something.
What? Why talk?
What? But yeah, I mean, certainly in retrospect, I see that that there was a reason that they did this stuff, right? I just wasn't ready to hear that. Ever been in a situation like that?
Well, I mean,
where you were not ready to hear what someone was saying,
right.
And I just wanted to do, and so I began drawing on my own, and then I was totally happy.
I mean, it's understandable that when, especially as a young adult, when somebody's trying to tell you how to do something or get you on a path to doing something, that if you've already got some sort of idea, that you become, slightly resistant, we'll say.
Yeah. Tell me.
Right. I don't know what, I've never been resistant in my life.
No, of course
not.
not.
Of course not. But I mean, in any case.
Yes.
So you started, okay, so what, at the school, what did they end up teaching you? What did you end up learning there? I mean, or was it just all about being in a community of peers?
Yeah, it was that.
It was that.
It was that. And I took other courses that weren't art. I just didn't take many art classes. I took philosophy and aesthetics and things like that, principally because there was an extraordinary professor, Ingrid Poole, who was teaching them, and she was filled with zillions of ideas, and she loved it if you had an alternative idea and could talk about it. And she lived a couple of blocks from the campus, and you could walk over to her house and hang out, and the students would be there and just be having hours and hours of conversations. She loved having this stimulating environment of students excited about learning and full of ideas and questions, and her in the middle of it. It was great. So that was really wonderful. So I did that, and then I stopped doing that and tried to support myself, working and feeling like there was this art world that I didn't know how to access, and feeling that I was trying to find my way,
Now, during that time of trying to find your way, were you still creating?
I always drew. I mean, that's one of the advantages of drawing is it lends itself to mobility, right? So I had, I mean, there was another thing is, if you don't have money, you can't, it's hard to paint.
Right. Paint's
Because
expensive.
if you, uh, um, unless you know that you could get a little watercolor set and replace the really terrible brush that comes with it with a really nice $3 brush, and then you can do really small renderings in a small sketchbook. What I discovered and was just this whole world opening for me was there was a brand of like I started out just working with magic markers.
Oh.
Those horrible smelling
Yeah.
thick things. And then Flair pins came along. Flair pins came along somewhere in the late 60s, and they were in a variety of colors, but they had these very tiny tips, and ultra fine tips. So you could do fine line work, and I also worked in stipple.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. And then they came out with a pen called the Design Marquette. And this had the extraordinary gift that, and I would get the very ultra fine black one, and you put it on paper, and if you held it to the paper, it would spread.
It would bleed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so you could modify the line. You could make a really thin line, or you could make a really ugly, creaky line. You could make lines have personality, and I just absolutely adored those. And I got a 11 by 14 sketchbook, spiral bound sketchbook, and I would just spend hours in the coffee, whatever it was, the cafeteria at the college or at the university, and I would be drawing and just exploring the possibilities of my felt tip pen. I just absolutely love it. I have a collection of them.
I mean, the fact that you even know the names of them and know the progression of them.
Yeah, well,
it's
it
pretty
was
meaningful.
Yeah, it was. They were what I drew with, and I have sketchbooks filled with all of these drawings. I would do them for hours on end, and I would take the sketchbook with me. And then in 1974, my life changed irreparably for the better when, out of the blue, I got this invitation to go into another universe, and it saved my life. I got a phone call from the young woman who was the secretary / receptionist for the University of Oklahoma Art Department. Oh, I'd gone to University of Oklahoma now. And she said, Michael, how would you like to go to a village in Mexico for 2 weeks where there's nothing but nuns and Indians and illustrate a textbook? And I asked her if she was on drugs. And she said no, and said that there was this organization that needed somebody to go illustrate this textbook that this nun had written in the first textbook in the native Tarahumara language, Indians, and would I like to be that person? She should have taken down the notes when she got the call from one of the deans and given it to the head of the art department, but instead she called me, and so that was, divine intervention.
Okay, so wait a minute. So you went to this small liberal arts college, which wasn't the University of Oklahoma.
No.
And then you transferred?
Well, I guess you could call it that. I kind of bummed around for a little while, and then I went to the University of Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
And that was better. It was much better because I wasn't working towards a degree, so I didn't take the fundamentals much. I mainly took silkscreen and etching. So
okay,
I was
so now
in
you're
the
progressing.
studio. Yeah, I was in the studio creating art rather than, so they were teaching me how to create silk, how technically to do my own silkscreen, how technically to do an etching.
So that for you made a big difference in terms of it. I mean, they weren't teaching you how to explore yourself in terms of your art. They were teaching you like the actual physical, step 1, get the screen. Step 2, etch the figure. Step 3, put the fabric or whatever on it.
Except I never felt like the fundamental art classes were helping me explore myself.
Right.
I felt that they were trained to teach me light and shadow, or they were trying to teach me proportion, perspective, those sorts of things, which I didn't find interesting or useful. So those were not interesting to me. I mean, I said I would look at medieval painting, and they painted objects in terms of their importance rather than in terms of what was in front of the other.
Right.
You know, so the Virgin Mary is going to be the largest thing in the picture, even if she's way back there and everybody else is here in front. You know, but so I found that a lot more interesting than trying to replicate, you know, European reality.
Right, but your expectations were different though too. You expected to learn more about yourself and art in those beginning art classes, which they didn't teach at all. But yet when you got to the etching and those classes, you weren't expecting to learn that part. You were expecting to learn the how-to.
Exactly, yeah, because I mean, I didn't think I needed an art class to teach me about myself. Right?
Yeah.
I needed them to show me, okay, you know, it's like needing somebody to show you how to drive a car. Somebody's going to have to teach me, you know.
Yeah.
So, and then being able to do my own silkscreen printing, that was fabulous. And I'd you could stay at the college or at the university in the art studios all night. And so I'd be there all day, all night for the whole weekend, you know, just printing. And if you wanted to add another color, you just add another color. You didn't have to say, well, I'm sorry, you're only allowed to do 9 colors, you know. So it was wonderful. It was actually a very heady time to be there in the art department, because there was a lot of the professors were doing work that they were excited about, and almost everybody was in the classes seemed to be pretty interested in what they were doing. More so in silkscreen than etching, but that's just the luck of the draw.
So obviously somebody at that school must have been noticing you and noticing what you did and taking note for the secretary who was not on drugs to call you
and say,
dude, hey,
yeah,
I got something for you.
Yeah, I think that probably. And I really, you know, one of my major regrets is that young woman's name is lost to history. I even reached out to one of the art professors who was there at the time and said, you know, can't remember, you know, 50 years later who this person was. But I mean, you know, that phone call changed my life. It wasn't a book I read, it was a phone call, you know. And so anyway, I got to go and everything changed in an instant. It was for the mission. The Catholic Church provided all the social services in this isolated area of Mexico at the time. And they had a little one-engine plane that picked me up in the capital city, Chihuahua, and we flew down into this village, Sisoyichi, and as we were flying over the landscape, it was the beginning of June, and so it was the rain season, and everything was flourishing, and just gorgeous trees and plants and wildflowers out in the pastures, and sheep and goats and shepherds attending their flock by night.
Is this your first time like out of the Midwest?
Well, I was born and raised in Arkansas and then went to Oklahoma. So it was we'd gone to Florida for vacation when I was growing up.
Right.
But I mean, it was my first real time to be anywhere, you know, and certainly in another country. And I had the great good fortune that my first experience of any length of another culture was in a rural setting. So you see the same people every day, and you get to, or I was trying to learn how they interact with each other, how people greet one another, what just what common interpersonal Spanish is rather than book Spanish, right? And then it so happened that the day after I arrived, I met the most beautiful woman in the world who became my wife. You know, so that was that.
That magic phone call.
That magic
had
phone
a
call.
lot of things
Right.
going for it.
Yeah, and I really felt when the little plane was bringing me down into Sisuichi, I had this sense that I was coming home.
Oh.
I know.
Right? Isn't that something else?
It was, okay, this is where I am now. Wow. Cool. Yeah. And then the plane lands and the guy's putting the plane into the hangar, and I look, and there's this is so poetic. So, it's like idealistically almost true, but it is true. So there's the valley, and there's this 18th century stone church, and then there are all these stucco houses, and then there's a wooden bridge going over this little arroyo, little riverlet, and here's this nun, short nun, all in whites, with a little indigenous girl, Tati, and Madre Olivia in her whites is waving vigorously to me, and she comes across. She's the woman I'm going to be working with.
She's
right?
the welcoming committee.
Yeah, she and the little girl, who's an orphan, and her sort of like her shadow. And we're using mainly hand signals and laughter, to communicate, because she doesn't speak English and I don't know Spanish at all. I'm going to learn fast, but I didn't know any. And then she takes me around, and the next day she's taking me on a tour of the offices where we're going to work on a textbook, and into where, next door is this building that has the lunchroom, and here's some women who are doing a dietary study of the indigenous people, and off in the corner there's a young teenage girl who's chopping potatoes or something like that, and then two teenage girls walk in, were friends of hers, and one's short and stout and the other one isn't, and the moment I saw the tall, thin girl, I immediately, who's that?
And that was your wife.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that was my birthday. 22nd birthday.
How
So,
many more things can you stack into this,
Right?
into this teeny tiny time period?
Yeah, exactly. So that was, it was just like, okay, the universe just shifted, and so that became my world. That became.
Now here's a place I don't usually go to, but I'm going to go there for you. Were you connected? I mean, did you find yourself connected to spirituality before this? I mean, was this something that you thought about and just something that was for you? Or is this the
No.
moment that you're like, oh my gosh, there's something bigger at play here that I have?
No, I was always, that's one of the reasons I didn't feel at home with the world that I was raised in, because I did always feel called to spirituality, and I really believed the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And growing up in the segregationist South, that's pretty hard to get to agree with the world you're growing up in,
Yeah,
So
right. You were dropped into a place that's
it's not about doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. When there's all this racist stuff everywhere. And I started elementary school when the Little Rock Nine started trying to integrate Central High School. So that same time. In fact, I attended Central High School, whatever it was, 6-7 years after they left Central High. So, and then it was at the height, or one of the heights of the Black Power movement in the United States, which was playing out at Central High School in an exciting way. And I was in the band, so half of my fellow students in homeroom and band were African American, and it was part of the conversation, and the interracial relations, played into how we related with each other, not only in that class, but in other classes, and I had some African American students who would be assigned to sit, we had assigned seating, right? Would be sitting next to me in history class, English class, and we had these really interesting conversations about what was going on outside of school, someone telling me that they'd gone to go hear Stokely Carmichael over the weekend. It's like, when was I going to hear some white boy in Little Rock, Arkansas, getting to hear somebody talking to me about that, So, but I mean, all of those things, and about how women are treated too, It was all part of what I thought about, and couldn't find how to resolve, maybe how to get everything to fit together in a cohesive package. But when I got to La Sierra, and certainly because of the religion I was brought up in, was very racist and very separatist, and wouldn't allow I actually saw black people refused entry to our church when I was in high school.
I'm sorry.
And just couldn't understand this at all. Anyway, when I was in Sisoyichi, I saw that the church was providing all of the social services. The church ran the hospital, and the nuns were providing access to birth control. They were.
That was progressive right there.
Right, 1974, because they had a very progressive bishop. It was the time of the Second Vatican Council.
Vatican II.
And Bishop Jose Yaguna was in charge of the entire Sierra where we were. And all of the priests and the nuns and the Jesuit brothers, I mean, they were full of all of this excitement about what they were doing, helping the indigenous people learn, recognize how they were being exploited by the people they were working for, the people who were the corporations that were coming in trying to cut down the tree logged for logging and other things. It was a very exciting time. It was really stimulating. It was really, really amazing.
There's a piece of this that I find really interesting, though, because since we're dealing with Catholicism, so in California, we had people, the missions coming through and educating the indigenous population, and basically
in a horrific way.
In a horrific way, right? Exactly. And this doesn't sound like that. Now it was 100 years later.
Right. Well, in fact, because the attitude that the bishop and the priests that I would have, hours-long conversations with the bishop and with the priest. They were all friends of mine. They were intrigued because I was, everyone was kind of intrigued because I was the first American who came and never left. And that their attitude was, we want them to retain as much of their culture and their belief system as possible, and we try to fit our belief system in with what they already have. But we never try to get them to give up what they believe.
So because there was no running over them.
No, not at all. In fact, they start from the position that we're here to learn. So they were, first of all, everybody who came to work in the mission, all of the priests and nuns and Jesuit brothers, they all had to learn the indigenous language before they could do anything else.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then you spend time observing and being with, which is the heart of the culture, of the indigenous Tarahumara culture, is to accompany, to be with.
So is this where, at this point, this is what you sort of got dropped into when you went to do these textbooks? You were expected,
a textbook.
You were expected to sort of drop in and observe, and then
No, I wasn't expected. I was expected to, and I was just supposed to be there for 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, because I was going to illustrate a textbook, and actually I have the textbook over there.
Now,
It's
okay.
a little it turned out to be a little mimeograph textbook. It was very, very cute, and so I would do a drawing of a young girl. I would do a drawing of a squirrel. You know, it was a very elementary level textbook.
Is it nearby?
Yeah, it is.
I really want to see this.
Okay.
It's nearby.
So this is the Holy Grail, and so it says whatever it says in the Tarahumara language, and that it was written by the teacher Guadalupe Olivia Perez, and the illustrator is Michael Walker, Sisugichi, Chihuahua, 1974, and this was when I was going through like my Matisse phase or something.
Oh, okay.
So all of my drawings are kind of, cheesy.
Here, I'm going to bring
Matisse.
this up so
Okay.
they can see it.
Okay.
So here, I'm going to just stand up. There we go. So I just, very Matisse-like. They're not cheesy. I would never call them cheesy.
No. They were very sincere.
Oh,
And it was mimeographed, so it's,
that is very sweet. I love this definition of textbook.
yeah. Well, the idea
Here, let's
was,
pull one more picture. Pull out something that you like, or
Okay.
I don't know, anything you
Okay.
want.
so the idea was that, okay, so the one on, hold on a
This
second.
one?
Let me take the cover down, because it's very first one.
Oh, it's so
Yeah, it's okay.
okay. So this one.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
So
This
those are
one.
matachinas. Those are the indigenous men dressed up for
And even though he told me not to,
celebration.
I should go.
The communities, it was this area where I went to in 1974 was very isolated. It's not that way now, unfortunately, but 48 years ago it really was. And like to get from the capital city by vehicle, which meant by truck, pickup truck, was like an 8-hour drive. Now it's like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And you're going dirt roads and no roads. I remember I rode with somebody, and we got to the top of a hill, and he honked, so that this little house over here on this hill, a little boy would come out of the log cabin and run down, and he would be down waiting for us, and he would move the wooden bar at the gate so that we could get through, and you'd give him, a nickel or something, and he'd be thrilled, and we'd go back. And it was very isolated. And the indigenous communities, being pushed aside by the dominant culture, were in even more remote locations. And there was this fabulous idea that they developed, that they would ask the gobernadores, the village elders of each of these indigenous communities, to select a few of their most promising young girls and men to come and come to Sisugichi, to the large dormitory they had in school, and be educated to go back and become the teachers for their community.
Oh.
And so for the year or two that they were in training, then they got donations of shortwave radios for each of these communities, and they would broadcast lessons across the shortwave radio for all of the other school kids, potential school kids, and then have these mimeographed textbooks for them to use.
Oh, that's how it went down.
So it was just to be used for like 1 year or so. And then it turned out that the young woman who was operating the shortwave radio and composing the lessons in longhand and broadcasting them and everything else was Mimi, my future wife. It's an amazing thing that she's doing, and 16-year-old girl doing this amazing stuff. So it was a pretty wonderful time.
So, did you end up staying there longer than 2 weeks?
Yes, I stayed I stayed 8 months until my visa expired. And then I went back to Oklahoma and took silkscreen and etching, then when, I would go back during vacation.
I was just saying, did you bring Mimi back with you or no?
No, that was impossible. That could not happen. And culturally you can't do that. You don't do that.
Love is messy.
Love is messy.
Come
but
on.
I was definitely wanting to be a good boy.
Well, that was nice.
And I love Mimi's family. They're just the most gorgeous people. They're just sweetest, kindest people. And they felt like they adopted me, And in fact, after 3 years, when I proposed to marry Mimi, Mimi's mom said, well, but can't you guys just keep going like this? And you just come back and visit us every few months and stay for a few months and then come, it's very, very sweet offer. But no, we said, no, we're going to get married.
So going back to the job you had, were you paid for doing the photographs for the textbook?
Photographs?
Not photographs, drawings. Yeah.
I was given a free round trip ticket.
Was that was considered payment?
I didn't even ask about payment. I think they gave me $100 spending money, $100, and then I thought, oh, okay. $100 in 1974. How much would that be? I don't know. Anyway,
your payment. It was obvious in so many other ways.
Right.
But I was just wondering if that.
I think, it so happened that when the way everything was just perfectly timed in the universe, was that it was the end of May, close to the end of May, when I got this phone call. And which meant that June I would have to pay the rent again. And I had just been let go of my job cleaning a deli because I'd missed something, and the food people would come in to check, and
the health department.
Yeah, didn't go well. And then it was the end of the spring semester, and I hadn't yet decided if I was going to enroll for the summer. So all of these things were like something I could be worried about when the phone rang and said, rather than all of that, how would you like to go to a village in Mexico?
This is like a giant cogwheel. Everything was just falling right into place, one right after the other. You
Exactly.
just had no idea what was coming, but
Right.
it was all right there.
Yeah. So that kind of has been my guidance. I try. What's the admonition or verse in the Bible? Let not your right hand know what your left hand doeth, or something. Well, I'm left-handed, so let not your right brain know what your left hand doeth. I try to know as little as possible about what I'm doing when I'm doing my art, or even what art I'm going to create. I try to stay out of it, literally, as much as possible. And if I don't know what to do next in a drawing or a painting, I lie on the floor here in my studio and I take a nap and I wake up and go back to work. It's resolved.
So is that in every case, or do you sometimes have an idea of like, here's a person's face that I want to explore, and I'm gonna start with that and then see where it takes me, or is it not even?
Well,
that
like
much?
I have my artwork has become focused over the past little over 20 years now, into becoming portraiture. Or actually 25, 30 years now, sometime in the 90s. That was not at all what I began doing. The artwork that I began doing, because I was drawing in my sketchbook, a lot of it was kind of autobiographical, so it was related to what I was going through and what I was thinking about, and my experience of the world. And then I began doing, I did a few of these, what I called autobiographical landscapes, where I drew myself in a landscape that expressed something that was important to me. So I did a drawing, self-portrait ex voto, which was based on a sort of ex voto form, but it was also an homage to Peter Bruegel.
What is ex voto?
Ex voto shows a devotee offering thanks to a spiritual power for deliverance from something terrible. Train wreck, falling off a building, attack, an illness, any of those sorts of things. And then there's a little text at the bottom saying, I so-and-so am giving thanks because of this, that, and the other, to so-and-so, and the date. So I did this one that uses the text of what I knew as the David Bowie song, Wild is the Wind. Okay, it's also, I was told later that it's from Carousel. It says, in this age of grand illusion, you walked.
You didn't want to sing it?
No, I don't want to do that to anybody. In this age of grand illusion, you walked into my life out of my dreams. And so I'm down here, and me is from a photograph I'd taken of her asleep with a little teddy bear. She and her teddy bear, like, part of it. And there are all these little cherubs all around it, and then there's this like stair step going up to her, and then there are all these images from Peter Bruegel's engravings and etchings of the 7 deadly sins and the 7 hopes, or whatever they are. And it's all in grisaille, it's all in shades of gray and everything. The Arkansas Art Center has it in their public collection. And then I did one of myself holding Jacobo, our son, as a little baby that I did next, and it's based on like how having your own child, having my own child, made me feel like I was part of the universe in a way that I hadn't felt like before, part of the world, And so I'm holding him in his little swaddling clothes, and then there are all of zillions of creatures and fish and zodiac signs and everything else all around this whole universe of stuff. So then I started doing, I started doing images of women in Mimi's family. I started doing the pieces on the daily life of the Virgin of Guadalupe. The Virgin of Guadalupe, who I presume people know. And I'd had a vision of her here in my studio, of the Virgin of Guadalupe, and in which I was sitting in my chair over here, and I looked up, and I suddenly saw the Virgin of Guadalupe and a little angel underneath.
Yeah, the classic.
Right, and it was like a director had yelled, "Cut." And so Guadalupe began moving her arms, and the angel began moving. And then I was like, my God, what am I going to do with him here in my studio? And it's a very small studio to begin with. And then suddenly, she'd be very happy at my mother-in-law Adelina's house, sitting by the wood-burning stove and talking and visiting, and the angel playing with the little kitty cat.
So you're having a vision.
Yeah.
And the vision has come to life, basically,
right,
outside of what we always see. And now you're contemplating where you're going to take her.
Well, I just say,
How you're going to entertain
it's
her?
like, I'm just like, well, here doesn't really work for her, but back home in the kitchen would be great. And so then that became the inspiration for this series I did of the daily life of the Virgen of Guadalupe, and so I would depict her sitting on the side of her bed in her sneakers, and she's doing a little punto de cruz embroidery of the Sagrado Corazon, and there's this print that it used to be, because people lived in these very isolated areas, that there'd be an itinerant print seller wandering around. Some guy would show up at the door and call out, and he'd have these little framed metallic prints, this cheesy little lithograph. Very inexpensive, inexpensively printed offset lithographic prints of religious imagery, saints and so forth. And then they would be framed in this sheet of metal that was cut at the 4 edges and flipped over to make the frame. And then it had a little thing for you to hang it up on the wall. And I had been really enamored of seeing these images of saints, because if you're not raised in certain religions, Catholicism and, I don't know, maybe Hinduism and some others, then you don't grow up in a home that has a lot of religious imagery just on the wall for decoration. But that would be what people would have in these, back home in Mexico, in the Sierra. And so I had this idea, like, people were living, having dinner with San Martin de Porres, and the Virgen de Guadalupe is watching over you literally as you sleep at night, So then it was this thing of being able to imagine the Virgen de Guadalupe in a home situation, essentially in my mother-in-law's house back home. She's getting ready in the morning, she's adjusting her crown, looking into this broken mirror that's in the windowsill. And there's a little pot of aloe vera, because you have aloe vera in case you get a wound or something, and a little tin of Vaporub, vapor rub. So all of these elements, and so then like I say, so what does she look like? She looks like the women that I'm with, So I would use our aunt Elvira, I would use my sister-in-law Irma, I would use my niece, also Mimi, one of our goddaughters, and so on, as the Virgen de Guadalupe at different points in her life. And then that sort of transitioned me into, then in 2000 I began doing my All the Saints of the City of the Angels project, exploring the cultural heritage of LA, using all the streets named for saints. And so I would use the faces of people of color who I encountered on these saint streets to depict the saints, as evocations of them, and also to reflect what Los Angeles actually looks like. So then I kind of inadvertently and without noticing began moving into portraiture. So like portraits of the elders from our village back home in Mexico. And then when I went to Bahia and was introduced to a whole other universe, complementary to the one I'd grown up with in Mexico, then doing portraits of the Afro-Brazilian women I was befriending, and on the pages of this book that, sort of like the phone call that took me to Mexico, turned out to be the perfect way of talking about these people.
I was going to say, now when you start doing portraits, what is it, are you, I mean, you've already established that basically you try to know as little as possible about what you're doing.
Right.
But I mean, is there an idea of what an emotion you're trying to get across? I mean, what are you hoping that people will see? I'm going to back the camera up just a little bit so that people can see this a little bit more. I mean, that's a really big piece there.
And it's one of the smaller ones. So this is acrylic wash on polypropylene paper, which is this sort of plasticized paper. And acrylic wash is essentially water with just a tiny bit of tint, acrylic tint. And I'm working from a photograph, and what I'm trying to do is be true to the photograph of this person, but also to try to convey what I really love about these people, which is that it's clear from looking at their faces that they've experienced a lot of hardship, and yet there's a kindness in their eyes that no difficult experience can erase. And I originally thought, when I had the original idea to do these, I thought, I would depict them in their surroundings. But whatever part of me knew better. And it just said, stop, you're done, stop. So the idea is to paint the person until they're present. And as soon as they're present, stop. Because anything beyond that is grandstanding.
That is a really beautiful thing to think about. I mean, because some artists, who shall be nameless,
but
and I'm pointing to
but
possibly to myself.
They'll appear in text at the bottom of them.
Right, right. But I mean, it's a hard place to know, like when you're working on a piece of art, when do I
Right.
stop? But to think about it in when it's present,
Yeah, when they're present.
when they're, if it's a person,
Yeah,
when
exactly.
they're present, or
Right.
when you feel that the work is exhibiting its presence.
Yeah,
That's a wonderful idea
Mhm.
as to how to stop
Yeah.
or when to stop.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
it takes it out of the skill level.
Right, it's totally not about skill.
Yeah.
It's totally not about skill. It's about conveying this person as there was. So I had this wonderful experience night before last that one of the elders of the Candomblé spirituality, which I've been immersed in through going to Bahia, Brazil, through an artist fellowship. She came to my studio and she was talking about some things and responding to my work, my Bahia work, and said something that applies here, which is that that she said, you're not portraying the surface of the person. She said, you're portraying the interior of the person. And so that's what we're responding to when we see the portraits. And I thought, okay, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
If you're going to have spirit come to you and remind you
Yeah.
that this is what they see and what's valuable,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah.
everything else is
Yeah.
cake,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. So, yeah, I really feel grateful that I am able to do this work, and that's what I get to do. But I also, I've always felt that there's a spiritual component to my art. In fact, I think of them all as like little altar pieces. And in fact, the project that you've had some participation in, my Body's Mapping Time project,
Yeah.
portraits.
Come
of-
scoot closer
okay.
to me again.
Okay.
There we go. All right.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. And this is what happens when I
Okay.
start moving the camera around.
Yeah.
All right. So I was going to say there was a big project that you started.
Right.
I'm not exactly sure why you started it,
Mm-hmm.
and you can talk about that. But it was
Okay.
a photography project.
Right. So I've always done, since I first went to Mexico, I've always done photography, or taken photographs. Started to do it because just everything was so new and interesting and beautiful to me. So much was. But also because the light is just extraordinary there. It's just amazing light. And particularly light of interiors, there was just this magic aura about anything that I would photograph inside of people's homes. And it occurred to me one day here in my studio that I would be coming in the morning or I'd be coming in the afternoon, and one of the reasons I just loved walking into this converted garage, my studio, is that there's south-facing light. The main window faces south, and the light just glows beautifully in here.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one component, and then we're in Northeast LA, and there's an organization called the Arroyo Arts Collective that for a number of years would have annual open studio tours, and people would come into my studio among many others on self-guided tours. And one year a friend of mine, Peter, came in with a woman, a friend of his, and
Peter Hess?
no,
Oh, okay.
and with a friend of his, this older woman, short, stout, and was wearing sweats and was walking with a cane and a very noticeable limp. And we were talking, and they were noticing I did so much work portraying women, but I didn't have any nudes, which most artists, certainly most male artists, would do. And I said, well,
artists, yeah.
yeah, and I said, well, it's because it's hard for me to imagine doing a nude portrait, a nude portrayal of a woman, in which you get a sense for who the woman is.
Right, because they're 15-minute, stands, 20-second stands, 2-minute.
Well, if you're
stands.
doing live drawing,
yeah.
but even if you're trying to do an extended painting, I said, you know, if I'm thinking about historical painted nudes in European art, there's Rembrandt's painting of Bathsheba, where she's really profoundly moved. She's holding this letter that David has sent her, thinking about whether or not she's going to say yes. And her body's displayed, but you're really focusing on her face. And even Modigliani's nudes, as gorgeous and luscious and sensual as they are, you don't think about who this woman is. So I mentioned that, and this woman said, "Well, I'll pose for you." And Peter said, "Yes, but tell him about yourself." And without going too long into it, she had been in a tornado when she was a child, and had severe injuries, and in the intervening half century, she'd had 40 operations.
Oh my gosh.
And she was offering to pose nude for me.
Oh my God.
So I thought that was an extraordinary, generous act on her part, offer on her part, and an aesthetic challenge on my part to create something that she would feel that had been worth her time, and trust. So anyway, so she came a few weeks later and posed for me, and I did a drawing of her, and she was totally at ease, probably the most totally at ease woman I ever photographed in the nude after that. But yeah, she was after going through all she'd been through, she was totally comfortable with her body.
But you were doing a drawing at this point.
I was photographing her.
Oh, you were.
I was taking photographs.
Oh, okay.
And then work from those photographs from one of them and do a drawing of her. Well, there was one point at which she was sitting, and she would use this sort of medical clinic black plastic cane, and I had a nice wooden carved cane that I gave her instead, and she just sat there like this, and I drew her. And Avenue 50 Studio up here in Highland Park had a group show a few weeks later called Along the Edge or something, and I was invited to participate in it. So I included my drawn portrait of Linda. And at the opening, the reception, the experience of women and men viewing that drawing was like night and day. Men, including male colleagues of mine, fellow artists, they would come to the piece, take a glance, and then wander off. Like, dude, you finally do a nude, and this is, what you choose. Whereas women in little clutches of girlfriends, you know how you are. Well, it's this beautiful thing. Women talk to one another, right? And they share, what do you think? I'm thinking this, sort of thing. And I was observing this a couple of times, and without any of these women knowing it was me, the artist. And then after a while, I approached this group of 3 young women, and I said, excuse me, I see you're spending time looking at this drawing, and I wonder what it says to you, why you focus on it. So, I just love the way she looks. She looks. I wish I looked like that. And I'm thinking, they're definitely seeing something different. So what is this? And I said, so could you tell me more about that? Well, she looks so self-assured. I wish I had that. And I thought, that's really interesting. So I introduced myself as being the artist, and 2 of the women offered to pose for me. And that's how it began. And then, like, when the women came, I was still photographing them. One came, and then a few weeks later the other, with the idea of drawing from the photographs. And like the 4th or 5th woman who came to pose for me, at the end of our session and looking at the photos on my laptop together, she said, J. Michael, you don't have to do a drawing or a painting of me. I just needed to do this. And so I was trying to listen, to do the thing guys don't do. I was trying to listen to what women said, which I still don't always do, I'll confess, ask my wife. But I thought, so it's the act of posing that has this significance for women, and that in of itself is important, right?
Yeah.
And that's, you can, during the course of the photo session, I would see that there was a point that arrived where the woman was relaxed in a way that she hadn't been before, like just at ease, you know, and letting down the last defenses, right? And then I saw that this is what I should focus on, are the photographs in this session, and obviously the woman having a voice in letting me know when the portrait actually happened, when you're really you, when you feel you've most been seen, because then there's, if I'm doing a drawing based on a photograph of you, then it's my take on.
Right, it's like the information flows through you, it can't help but be touched by you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So, but I've facilitated this. I've created a safe, welcoming environment for you to feel free to pose. And we've worked on choosing the poses together, and even if I suggest you sit a certain way, you're going to sit your version of that, right? And you're going to do so. Plus you're choosing what ring, what earring, what necklace, and all these things that help express you. And then you see the one is it, oh my God, that's me, you know. And it's like, that's me, or oh my God, that's me. You know, it's a different version of that, depending on where you are with yourself at that moment, right?
Right.
And so then I saw that in a way that you always, as an artist, hope your work is functioning, you see that your art is functioning in a way that it's serving someone.
Right.
So it was huge for me to know that I had slipped once again into doing something that had great meaning for people, you know.
It was, full disclosure here, this is how I met J. Michael. I was at an opening, and somebody mentioned to me that he was working on this project and said, Natalie, you should go talk to him. You could be in this project. I'm game. With naked pictures, I'm in. And
what could go wrong?
What could go? Anyway, so I introduced myself to J. Michael, and then within a week, I think I was here in the studio participating in this project. And it was a remarkable experience, quite honestly. Natural light in this corner, just sitting still for, you know, however long the exposure was, a minute at a time.
Yeah, very, very low light with real cameras.
With real cameras.
So it's not like taking a cell phone photo.
Now, how many women are in this project so far? I mean, I think it's officially closed, maybe, but I'm not sure that you officially close anything.
Yeah, it's over 90 women.
Yeah. I want to say 96, but I'm not sure if that's really the number.
I'm not sure, 93, 96. Yeah, obviously the pandemic meant we're not doing this for a while. And I had already thought that it just made sense to stop at the obvious 100 mark, you know. But and there are a handful of women that I would like to include still. There are any number of women who said, you know, I want to pose, right? But we'll see. We'll see.
What are you hoping to have happen to this project? I mean, are you hoping to have it in a book? And
it's a book.
Yeah,
and
making
a coffee table book. And one thing that I've also done is I think it's 2019, I guess. Yeah, early in the year of the last year before the plague. I was invited to do a solo show of the work at USC in their gerontology department. They have an
beautiful.
art gallery there.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I'd love to do it there, but I would like, and they've proposed that I have it focus on older women. And I said, well, that's sort of a slippery slope. I mean,
Right.
a woman, who decides for a woman?
I'm going to tell you right now, as soon
as
as you said geriatric, and I was thinking about the show, I was like, well, I'm not going to be in that.
Actually, I said gerontology, but
Whatever.
you heard.
I heard
it is
geriatric.
It is gerontology and geriatric. But anyway, it's like, I said, I'd rather have the women be of all ages, because that, I think, is the beauty of seeing how beautiful these women are at all ages, and also so that get some distance and look and see if the older women are expressing something different than what the younger women are, because the older women have all this experience and potentially wisdom and knowledge, and the young women are fresh out of the gate, So it was really wonderful to have a group of women. So what I did is I invited the women to write whatever they wanted about it. I'd started that back whenever it was, a dozen years ago, when I invited the first women, or when the first women posed, and we had a show at Avenue 50 Studio, and we had artist and model statements. But I've been trying to, and I need to get, as you as well, to encourage women to have a voice in reflecting on what it was like, or how they feel about it, any of those things. So I think it's good to have the women's voices.
I think so too. I see let me see, there's some people have said things. I'm getting to your questions right now. Good morning, everybody from the high desert. That's Joe Alvarez. I don't know if you know him. Linda Todro is watching.
Things happen that are meant to be. Yes. It's
yeah.
good to pay attention to
This
them.
gentleman is in Detroit, Clifton.
Thank you, Clifton.
I might say that he's painting and portraying the concept of grace.
I like that.
Georgia says, I can see the kindness in the eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Georgia also says, Michael, you have a beautiful soul.
Oh, Georgia, that's very sweet.
You might know Georgia. She says that
I do know Georgia.
Yeah,
She's
she's
a
taught your
sweetheart.
son, yeah. Clifton says, I like this gentleman very much. I am learning a lot, even as an abstract focused artist.
I
So
appreciate that. Thank
that's
you.
very sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, I gotta check the time here.
We've been talking for 3 hours.
We've been talking a long time. I'm gonna sort of close it up just
Yeah.
because I want you to have the rest of your day in peace.
Okay, it's up to you. I'm
And
good.
you know,
It's very enjoyable.
it is very
Yeah,
enjoyable.
you're very
Do you have any words that you'd like to, I don't know, you want to share with people, have them know about you, have them know about their work, anything that you want to part with? So much and so little at the same time.
Yeah, I guess just don't overthink it. Don't try to get out of the way. That's what I do. Well, I've never felt like I needed to follow another artist's advice. So I would.
So I'm going to give you this advice, but please don't listen.
Yeah, exactly. So what I've found that works for me is listening. Listening works, and trying not to impose myself on the process. Seeing where the process takes me. And in terms Clifton, in terms of working with abstract, there's a drawing I did. I started on this drawing for my Bahia series, and I had put these pages of this book together that I was going to be painting on and drawing, and so I'm working this way and doing this piece, and then I see that this is superfluous, this area over here, I really don't need that, so I take it down and I cut off those pages and I set them aside and I finish doing this piece, and then I take these pages, this part of the potential part of the picture, and I see that by turning at a 90-degree angle, I can start doing this other thing. So it's like I took it apart and then added more paper to make another piece. You know, it's like always being open to new pathways. And yeah, I really believe for me that being open and listening to spirit, to listening to something I overhear, something that I read, I mean, all of these things can have a great impact on what I'm working on. And then also to stopping, you know, stopping work. And sometimes stopping work, folding it up, putting it away, and then bringing it back years later and working on it. Or saying, no, it was done. Or no, it's not any good. Or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's all process. It's all process. I mean, and we don't have to know.
We don't have to know.
The creators don't have to know. Because it's not for us. If we're lucky.
And with that, those are some big words. All right. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks
or
for
me
having
letting
me.
me be here, quite
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Until next week. We'll
Bye.
see you later. Thanks for joining
Take
us.
care.
Bye.